The thing that strikes me first is the use of the children. And I'm going to read you an extract from Hamas TV on May the 2nd, 2014. And this is a children's program. In whichever countries you come from, you have programs for little kids, often with people dressed up, in this case as somebody dressed up as a buzzing bee. And it starts off with a child host called Rawan. And talking to a little girl, another little girl called Tulin. And the child host says, "Tulin, why do you want to be a police officer?" "Like who?" And the little girl says, "Like my uncle." And the child host again says, "Okay, so what does a policeman do?" And then an adult in a giant bee costume says, "He catches thieves and people who make trouble." The child host then says, "And shoots Jews, right?" And the girl says, "Yes." And the child host says, "You want to be like him?" And the girl nods. And the child host then says, "Allah willing, when you grow up." The little girl says, "So that I can shoot Jews." And the bee then starts clapping his hands. And the child host says, "All the Jews? All of them?" The little girl says, "Yes." And the child host says, "Good." Now there's a certain sense, and it's very important not to laugh, because it is so absurd to get inside the mentality that can do that and use children in that way, that I think it becomes extremely difficult for anybody in the West really to get to grips with it. If Western governments are going to adopt a different approach to one Islamist terror group to another, in terms of the way they will condemn it or not condemn it, never mind the question of whether it's true or false, never mind the question, what's the message they are sending to our own Muslim populations? That maybe at some point that you too will have a certain degree of recognition. Maybe we won't look. If it wasn't for the fact of these terrible and very public beheadings that are going on, would Western governments really be that clear about what's happening in Iraq? A very interesting and very worrying part of the findings from this report is that 72% of respondents, this is a representative sample of 1,274 adults from both the West Bank and Gaza, 72% favor the transfer of Hamas's methods to the West Bank. And support for emulating Hamas in the West Bank stands at 70% among West Bankers and 74% among Gazans. That has major ramifications. There is a vast literature on totalitarianism, and there was a very famous scheme set out by Karl Friedrich and Zbigniew Brzezinski, which set out the so-called 6 points, and I'll just read them out because it's actually quite pertinent. Number 1, an official mass ideology to which adherence is demanded. Number 2, a single party which is intertwined in all levels of society. Number 3, control over the military. Number 4, control over the media. Number 5, a commitment to the use of terror against opponents. Number 6, centralized direction and control of the economy. You see that sense when we try and get into this almost impossible effort to get into the mindset of Hamas and how it operates. In the use of human shields, the use of children to build tunnels, the utter disregard. But it isn't even disregard. Hamas glories in this. I'll read you a quotation again from Hamas TV about the deaths of Gazans during the very recent conflict's most intensive phase. This is from July of this year. The quotation is as follows: "These people," that's Gazans killed in the war, "their time had come, and they were martyred. They have gained paradise. Don't be disturbed by these images. He who is martyred," and get this, "he who is martyred doesn't feel. His soul has ascended to Allah." The one central point I want to drive home is about Hamas and anti-Semitism. Because however extraordinary it may seem to you in the World Jewish Congress and to the Jewish people who are constantly seeing these quotations, you'll be getting through your emails all the time about what Hamas has said about killing all the Jews, and it isn't just in the Charter. This is one of the favorite lines of the apologists. The absolute favorite lines. I can actually quote and name, I won't do it, but I could quote and name people in think tanks in Britain who have referred to Hamas's charter as being unhelpful. by which the person in question means unhelpful to my narrative, which is one of being an apologist for what's going on in terms of Hamas's behavior. The apologists for Hamas are united by at least one quite specific characteristic, and that is the refusal to acknowledge the centrality of genocidal anti-Semitism to the group's ideology and ambitions. And it's all the time. I gave the quotation from a child. I'll give one from July 25th from a Hamas cleric. Our belief about fighting you Jews is that we will exterminate you until the last one, and we will not leave of you even one. This is easy to find, and you can find it, as I say, also in the Charter. And the use of children is central too. The Western responses to anti-Semitism have been nothing short of appalling when it comes to Hamas. It is true the government of the United States and also the government of Germany does talk about it occasionally, but the message is plainly not getting through. Put bluntly, Western governments are not showing the kind of robust leadership on this matter that one might expect given the West's historical record on violent anti-Semitism. The central point that I want to bring to you is, and I hope the report, as I say, it's provisional, I'd like to hear your opinions, is that one of the reasons why governments, media, NGOs, and commentators generally are not getting this point about what happened during the Gaza war is because they will not get to the point about what Hamas really is and what it stands for. And until we get to that point, the task at hand is going to be firefighting, one little fire after another. We will remain in the situation. There will be another Operation Protective Edge, another Cast-Lead, there'll be another battle, another this, and we'll have the same problems. We have got to ram this message home to governments, media, and think tanks that Hamas is a genocidal, anti-Semitic organization, and if you don't understand that, you don't understand Hamas. Thank you for your attention.